listen.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We mention all those because there's a lot of different ways you can get at us, and of course, comments coming through there throughout the show is Ida Beza Gardner with the hello and the wave there as well, already demonstrating, and you can again do that throughout the show if you can do so safely, because don't worry, we'll be having those phone lines open later during the program as we usually do. All of this in support of our dual primary missions: A, having live local talk radio here in the borderland, because damn it, I think we're worth it, and then also talking about the things that affect us here, because no one else is really going to have that conversation the way we do. The people who live, work, play, raise families, etc. Do all that stuff that all these issues run right through. And so a lot of it going on today, we had kind of just started delving into as more releases were out about what Mayor Leeser had written in his open letter to kind of address the whole city manager situation, an open letter to the community about that vote, what's in with it, and all those parts of it. And so, as is to be expected, more response out today now, including from the former mayors that were pretty well addressed in that. So we'll definitely be delving into that. But some other major things going on, including with elected officials, but also public servants in a way, and kind of of course, the direct intersection of it, Sheriff Richard Wiles announcing his retirement. Now, it's not going to be like right now, but still another big shakeup or set of things coming there. And then just another series of, border security, immigration incidents that we'll delve into and mention a bit more, as we also have Monica Cervantes with the Hola, and the Austin Redfern, Hey Andrew, and Flaco Jimenez with the Good. Not sure which one that was in reference to, but again, if you're on board with the missions and how we're going to talk about things, you're in the right place, as everyone else is as well. Also, having an interview today with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., joining us here in the studio to talk about some of their in-depth reporting and big stories that they've been working on, including, well, more in-depth on the city manager situations and even some other things that may have been kind of flying under the radar-ish, as all these other major things have been coming out of city council, including some of those complaints made against at least one city council person. We'll delve into that and what is kind of behind that as much as we can, and just a whole lot more on the big things going on around here. So a lot to get into here today. So also have Robbie Flores. Good afternoon, everyone. And John Browson, and particularly Sheriff Wiles there, saying that Sheriff Wiles, having done absolutely nothing against cross-border drug gangs, finally decides to retire. I mean, yeah, it's definitely been an issue, and I wouldn't necessarily totally agree with that, particularly since, as is kind of highlighted by today, 3 men arrested after gunshot was fired from the vehicle in El Paso County, and notably, that's the article title from our news partners over there at KFOX 14, the individual taken and booked into the El Paso County Detention Facility by sheriff's deputies, I do believe. Yes, El Paso County Sheriff's Office, responding to it all under the charges of manufacture or delivery of controlled substance and that penalty group. So, I mean, if you haven't been totally happy with him, well, that'll be a situation developing. But spoiler alert, he is going to be doing it kind of at the end of the term 2024. So expect that to be another hot item on the upcoming ballot. But also, Ida Beza Gardner saying, want to wish Tim Vest happy birthday, a faithful radio listener to this program. Appreciate that. I always kind of keep it in the back of my mind that while we certainly appreciate the interaction that comes from everyone commenting, chiming in, the majority of the audience there is probably either in their car, listening at home, or just content to absorb what comes out of this. And I don't take particular issue with that. That's how radio works. But if you do want to interact, you're more than welcome to it. Happy birthday, Tim, there. And also Flaco Jimenez clarifying it was good afternoon, hit send prematurely. And also Sean Gardner, howdy to you as well. So Sheriff Wiles announcing his retirement. Nothing like immediate pressing, but he's been on the job in this job since, 2009, technically. So, that's quite the legacy there already. But of course, I mean, it's kind of a highlight that we've got both of the major law enforcement positions within El Paso County seeing some changeover in one way or another. Recently, of course, it was, or last year that we had the death, or within the, last 6 months, probably more accurately to say, the, passing of the former El Paso chief of police. So you got a lot of potential changeover happening there. We'll see how we can actually keep things going. So transition plans, all those kind of things, very important to me in those aspects once we get kind of beyond the mourning and the official part of it. So that's one thing being announced today. But then I want to delve a little bit further. I mean, James Holmes, he has served as law enforcement for a long time. That, again, undoubtedly, and we'll have a little bit more details from our news partners at KFOX 14 a little bit later in the hour. But I wanted to delve a little bit further into that open letter that Mayor Oscar Leeser wrote to the community that, again, starts, quote, "As mayor of the great city of El Paso, I was elected to represent all the citizens of this community, not any special interest group, association, and good old boy network. As such, any decisions I make will be in the best interest of the citizens of El Paso. There's been a lot of recent speculation and rhetoric regarding the city council's decision to end the amended and restated employment agreement with the city manager, and much of that rhetoric has been incorrect and somewhat validated to some of the community by the intervention of elected officials in news programs, rhetoric that needs to be clarified." And so he lays out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different kind of bullet points, summarizing major parts of that here. We went through some of that yesterday, but I interjected a few comments, including he directly responds to two former city mayors. Doesn't necessarily directly name them. Well, he names one of them, DeMargo, and particularly mentioning that I won 80% of the vote that was against him, which, that is accurate, and maybe a little bit remember what happened, kind of. There's subtext there is what I'm reading into. Anyway, but some of the most major ones is, as had been kind of part of speculation even before this letter was out, about why wasn't anything being said about the firing, or the, again, technically notice of intent to terminate in the the 120 days from the date of that vote. So late June, early July kind of time frame we're looking at there, saying that you cannot say anything about it. And he says kind of appreciates the city manager understanding this in the wake of the vote. And then to quote directly that if the provision of the contract is used, you do not provide reasons or cause if terminated for without cause. My context there, continuing on with the quotation, "It is not a reflection of performance, it is not an evaluation, and it is not a contract negotiation. It is a decision of the city council to end employment without cause and go in another direction. Providing cause would be disrespectful to the city manager, contrary to the provision of the city manager's contract, and I'm surprised that two former mayors don't seem to understand this," end quote. A couple other things of note there. I mean, you can see the full kind of letter as it was over with our news partners at KFOX 14, but one other very kind of short bullet point I want to highlight there is, quote, "no effort to change the city manager form of government," end quote. And again, former Mayor DeMargo mentioned again specifically, and some of the things that happened in his tenure, actually, and then kind of Mayor Leeser's larger goals, coordinated efforts, and kind of closes it out with the final bullet point saying, "I could one by one refute each of the claims being made by former elected officials in interviews in an effort to retain the status quo, remain relevant, and respond to the elite in this community that move them, but this is not a campaign. They apparently are in one. I am not." And then the kind of final paragraph to close it out, "I will continue acting in the best interest of all citizens of El Paso. Information regarding next steps will be announced when they are finalized, and it is my steadfast belief that the future is bright in our region. I want to assure the citizens of El Paso that this community is larger than any one person, whether that is me, the city manager, or anyone else. We are El Paso strong, and our brightest days are ahead." One other thing I want to note, as mentioned in there as well, kind of also the mayor kind of called out and decried any efforts to see recall, particularly for newly elected city council members. Now, of course, this being and there being individuals named in this letter, there has now been response, among other things, from former Mayor DeMargo, saying that he not exactly totally pleased with that. Margot said in an interview with again our news partners at KFOX 14, quote, "I want to clarify, I am not running ever again for any public office whatsoever, but I also never said council couldn't do the action that they were doing, but I can also say that it was the wrong decision." Going on to say about it's essentially issues with governance, saying, quote, "It could affect bond ratings that we have as a city, which applies to the cost of our debt." And yeah. And he does on the idea of not trying to replace the actually city manager form of government. Margaret said, quote, "I agree with that. And I've said in my other interviews that would take an amendment to the charter," which is my analysis there as well. So we're going to be talking a little bit further about that on what the potentials are and what kind of is on the back end. Again, we're going to be having on El Paso Inc. Editor of such, Robbie Gray, joining us in studio here shortly. Other commentary coming in, including Flaco Mena saying nobody's going to want the job now. This whole thing is stupid. Maybe, maybe not. Again, there has been a subtext conversation going on about the whole city manager form of government. But again, this single vote could not do away with that. But it would be potentially could be seen as the start of a trajectory towards that if that was indeed a goal of, well, anyone involved with it. John Browson and also saying, "I'm sure that the current the deputy city manager could run the city's fire department for numerous years, who would make a fine interim city manager. His price would be quite a bit lower than $400,000 per year," goes on to say. So those are some of the swirling ongoing conversations with this, but we got a lot more that we're going to be delving into, including some of the border enforcement, border security, and immigration issues going on in our region, including current enforcement. But let's go ahead and take that first break of this hour right now. You are, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Comments, of course, going on over on the social media. Phone calls a little bit later, as we usually do, announce when those are open. But in any case, stay tuned. More after this break. Again, talking with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. After these brief messages here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
54 southbound between McCombs and Trans Mountain, it's a 10-minute delay. I-10 eastbound through downtown Dallas over to Trowbridge, it's a 5-minute backup. An accident's blocking the right lane on eastbound Diana Drive at Gateway North, and I see police are on the scene there. And an injury accident in Zaragoza at Escobar Drive. It's slowing traffic back to the North Loop Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories.
How do you save someone from a snake bite? Well, you milk a snake, of course. We'll have the story of a man who does. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Josh, quote, "After walking around my whole life being a mouth breather, I was excited to try Navage. I read the directions carefully, pressed the button, and oh my gosh, what a sensation. So much mucus, so much crud, but oh sweet, merciful air, I can finally breathe you through my nose. Never have I ever taken such an amazing breath in my life. This is a life changer," unquote. He's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
On Ice-T's Daily Game podcast, the cultural icon unveils words of wisdom and motivational quotes he's collected over the years. No punches are pulled, as Ice shares his special brand of profound and brutal honesty on topics like romance, success, failure, and more.
You can't sit back and say, I'm going to win this game and not go to practice. You still got to play that game. Faith and your mind is just not going to make it happen.
Listen to Ice-T's Daily Game on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity during tax season because so much sensitive info is all together.
Before we start the annual meeting of Sean's personal info, has anyone seen Social Security number?
Not me.
Nope.
Nuh-uh.
Oh no, he's been stolen.
LifeLock by Norton makes it easy to help protect yourself. If you become a victim, we'll work to fix it. No one can monitor all transactions, but you can save up to 25% off your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Identity theft protection starts here.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one. It's the oldest, where most of the audience is, et cetera, et cetera. But you also got other Facebook pages, also YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk for the most part. So again, whatever works for you, where you can see us, comment, do the stuff you need to, if you can do so safely. The right place for you to be as we continue our mission to have live local talk radio in the borderland and talk about the things that affect us here. And a lot of interesting conversation. Those dropping those likes and reacts we appreciate, including, that's primarily the Facebook, but Angel Rueda, James Holmes, Jerry Hart, Robbie Flores, Flaco Jimenez, Monica Cervantes, and Ida Beza Gardner. And much of the conversation going on about the city manager, the contracts involved with it. I think, there were some questions about performance and stuff like that, or at least questions about what was he doing. There have been some statements that were also issued by the city manager and the office of kind of detailing that we've gone over previously. But I feel like the contract, and particularly the amount of it, as John Browsleton brought up earlier, is probably one of the biggest points of contention, at least from listeners and commenters on this show. But James Ratcliffe also bringing another interesting point here, saying the lawsuit by Joe Pickett as well, when the city is not using the water fees for road repair, but most likely salaries. Not exactly what the suit is, but basically saying that the franchise fees that are then being applied to particularly the El Paso water utilities, the franchise fee being the essentially cost that is then put on to other departments for damage they cause to the road. So heavy trucks like environmental services ends up having a franchise fee for the roads department for the damage they end up doing to just heavy vehicles. Essentially, that suit does end up alleging that this is not actually a franchise fee or the purpose for it, for that's kind of road repairs, but rather kind of a backdoor tax increase. So that will be an interesting one to see progress here. But joining us right now here in studio, as we do most first Tuesdays of the month, we are joined by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Andrew.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about some of these things. So the city manager has long been a hot button and interesting topic. It's kind of interesting in retrospect when we did some review recently of kind of how the position came about, that vote back in 2004. And really, when you look at it that way, the fact that we've only had two so far is interesting to me personally. So the fact that this vote has now been taken, and we are seeing that again, 120 days, notice of termination, shorthand fired, but not for a while yet kind of thing, is an interesting one. But of course, it has led to, as we kind of discussed with the letter from Mayor Leeser and response from former city mayors, those kind of things, speculation on what comes next. So whether or not the city manager form of government could conceptually be in the chopping block for the next charter amendment, that remains to be seen. But in the meantime, replacements are definitely kind of the next order of business, even if we do have that, better part of 4 months kind of in place of there. And you all kind of do an interesting breakdown of what the potentials are, who you analyze as maybe good fits by their being available or potentially qualified for the job in the region already, right?
Well, in terms of the position itself in the future, the city manager form of government, I haven't heard anybody in a position of authority at the city talking about doing away with that. And I've actually heard the opposite, although it has been clear that there has been some dissatisfaction or a sense that perhaps that office has too much power, or a sense that the elected leaders don't give enough guidance into that position. And also, well, this open letter here from Mayor Leeser is notable that it doesn't answer the question on why they decided to terminate the city manager.
And in fact, pointedly does not answer that
I think
question.
you make a good point, though, that there's been a lot of discussion about his contract and the salary.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's clearly a big piece behind this. But, you know, naturally, the attention turns to speculating on what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, it is all just pure speculation. But there are some names being thrown out there.
I mean, of course, the city manager, it's not that they're this new managed form of government. It's not, there's a city manager and then just a whole bunch of like, you know, rank and file employees. There is a hierarchy there. There are, you know, deputy city managers, you know, assistants, all those kind of things, and not just all employees that are just under him. So there are people that could potentially step in at least an interim capacity, even if I think it's pretty fair to fully expect at this point that there will be one of those, you know, quote unquote national search firms come in and do that kind of thing, because the very least I see that as kind of a CYA thing, being like, well, no, we had the best. We had top men on this. Top men. And so, yeah, I expect that. But in the meantime, particularly if we end up getting towards the end of that 120 days of people that could and likely would, if the need be, step in.
Yeah, so to be clear, this is pure speculation, but the name I'm hearing more and more is Kerry Weston.
Okay. So who is Kerry Weston?
Well, he was a senior deputy city manager until he recently retired. I mean, going back a while back, I knew him best when he worked with Redco, which was the old economic development organization, and the Borderplex Alliance. He was very involved with that group in the business community. Later, he joined the city and worked in a number of city departments and then city economic development, and then he retired. Again, he hasn't said if anybody's considering him for that position, but it's a name I'm hearing a lot for it.
I mean, we've had a lot of changeover in high level positions within this last.
It has been a lot of change
year, yeah, and so as much as there is speculation, some of it has been more accurate than not, but it has been worthwhile thinking about. So Kerry Weston, an interesting example of it here, but then again, some of the kind of existing city officers also end up coming up in this discussion.
Right. So you also have, of course, Tracy Jerome, who's the current senior deputy city manager, been with the city since 2015. That's another name out there. Another names I've heard, Sam Rodriguez, professional engineer, who's the city's chief operations officer. Even Sylvia Firth. She was city attorney for 6 years and is now in private practice. But these are just names people are talking about as people will speculate. Nothing's been firm on it. And at this point, we don't even have a good answer on why they decided to terminate the city manager or an announcement for a search for a new one.
Yeah, and I think at least one that was maybe kind of summarized. I don't think John Brownson mentioned him by name, but Mario D'Agostino as a deputy city manager who was previously with the fire department and part of that and has kind of risen that way. That has been some other kind of, at the very least mentioned it only in this show, speculation I've heard as well. So there's a lot of potentials there. But again, we are better part of 4 months out of kind of a D-Day, so to speak, on a decision having to be made anyway. And they're, no longer being in the position. So we'll kind of evaluate. This is kind of a handicapping at the moment.
But do remember the job market in general. It's hard to fill positions. I don't know how many city managers are floating around out there looking for positions like this, or who at the city might be able to step into that role. Maybe that's more likely. It just seems like with a lot of these agencies and departments, they have a hard time, and it takes a long time to fill positions. And like you said, there's been a lot of change at the top for a number of organizations.
Right.
The police chief, and then this won't happen till 2024. But then Sheriff Wiles saying that he's planning to retire when his term is up in 2024. So it's for El Paso standards, where we're kind of chill here. We don't see a lot of change. It's a bit of a change in direction.
And then just one other that comes to mind in that whole conversation is, of course, also the district attorney, which will also be facing an election in 2024. So a lot of okay, I see the, help wanted, if you're out of patience, fill out an application, signs around local businesses kind of thing here. So I often think about, the worker shortage, labor issues, those kind of things at that level. But I guess you could kind of apply it to the top level here, particularly I think for the city manager, since the contract has been such a part of it. And so even if this ends up going to the whole national search firm, anyone doing probably even a cursory search of city manager El Paso, Texas, that's going to be like the first 8 stories that come up is about issues, back and forth vetoes, just kerfuffles over the city manager contract. So I could potentially see someone kind of think Flaco Jimenez saying that it's going to have to be a very special individual willing to kind of step into that milieu.
Yeah, and perhaps that's why I think a lot of the names initially mentioned are within the city, because it's someone that they could promote. And of course, the question will be what the contract will look like, because there was a lot of angst about the city manager's salary. So presumably, you would think that it would be lower than it is. But we'll see. We'll see.
I think as it kind of came up, at least the numbers I was finding, that from when Joyce Wilson, the first city manager, left, that she was in the $250,000, mid $200,000 range. But then, of course, this most recent contract that will now is in the process of being vacated again for city manager Tommy Gonzalez was going to be now capped at $450,000 a year, plus benefits, which is leading to some of the estimations about the payout that will be coming after this in the maybe up to $1 million and $900,000. What I'm hearing,
I
more
think it's
at
around
this point.
900,000.
Yeah. So I mean, some of these things are not totally clear yet, like the amount of. As we had conversations back in previous years, even with our news partners at KFOX 14, about how many benefits, sick days does he have accrued, other benefits, stuff like that. So there are some question marks that I doubt we'll totally see answered until essentially it's all wrapped up. But yes, these are just some of the foundational issues going into kind of what comes next. So tell you what, we got to take that next break right now, and a whole lot more coming into this, including other issues going on at the city that we'll be discussing here. So we're going to take that break right now. Coming out of this, we'll be continue our conversation with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., and delving further into these issues, but a whole lot more. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. El Paso County Sheriff Richard Wiles announced his retirement today. Wiles has served as sheriff since 2009 and has worked in law enforcement for almost 43 years. Wiles was first elected sheriff in 2008. He started his career with the El Paso Fire Department at age 18 and spent more than 20 years with the El Paso Police Department. He was appointed chief of police in 2004. Wiles will retire upon the end of his term on December 31st, 2024. A shooting along Alameda in El Paso's Lower Valley last night involved a Border Patrol agent. It was confirmed last night that someone was taken to the hospital with serious injuries following the shooting. An agent assigned to the Iseta Border Patrol station was involved in the shooting near Midway in Alameda near Riverside High School after responding to an illegal entry made by several individuals. The FBI is investigating. And last night, 9 people with serious injuries went to the hospital after a rollover crash in Sunland Park, where it is believed about at least a dozen people were in a car. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound is slowing down just a little bit through downtown between Dallas out to Geronimo. It's a 7-minute delay. Stop and go on Global Reed southbound from the Spur down to Montana Avenue, 33-minute delay. Injury accident, Zaragoza south of the 10 Gateway at Escobar. Traffic's backed up to North Loop Drive. Try Penndale as your alternate. And an accident North Loop Drive eastbound at Yarborough. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Calmer weather returning for tonight. We'll see partly cloudy skies to mostly cloudy skies at times. Lows getting down into the 40s, so grab that coat and jacket for tomorrow morning. Breezy to windy and very mild for tomorrow afternoon. Seeing a high El Paso around 78 degrees. Partly cloudy skies, maybe slightly cooler for your Thursday, high around 74. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by The Verdict with Ted Cruz.
I'm Ben Ferguson. And I'm Ted Cruz. News just broke that it's likely that the COVID-19 virus came from a Chinese lab. But you could have learned that 3 years ago on our podcast, Verdict.
And that's exactly why you should download Verdict with Ted Cruz right now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's face it, credit cards are pretty much a necessity.
New tires for the car? Oh, here's my card.
I order takeout, here's my card. And most of us just accept the high interest rates credit cards charge as a necessary evil.
What are you going to do?
Get a low fixed-rate credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream from $5,000 to $100,000 and pay off those credit card balances. Apply online, and you could get your money as soon as the day you apply. The average credit card company charges over 19% APR. But with Lightstream, you can get a fixed rate as low as 7.99% APR with autopay and excellent credit.
Now I can pay off my high-interest credit cards and save money with a much lower rate.
Apply today at lightstream.com/radio and get an additional interest rate discount. That's lightstream.com/radio. Lightstream.com/radio.
Subject to credit approval. Rates range from 7.99% APR to 23.99% APR and includes 0.5% auto pay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/radio for more information.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you. Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
It doesn't matter what you drive, it's how you get there. BrakeMaster doesn't care. We've seen it all and fixed it all. Get your vehicle in BrakeMaster shape today. Download coupons and schedule an appointment from your smartphone.
BrakeMaster. We give you an honest break.
This report is sponsored by BrakeMasters.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on pretty much all of those here. A lot of conversation going on, a lot of people tuning in, chiming in, adding their 2 cents over on the social media, including kind of to the conversation, I'm assuming, involving the city manager and speculation on replacements. Javier Maldonado saying hire local. Again, a focus, and those are most of the names we've discussed so far. But again, have expectations that anytime you're dealing with these high-level positions, there will probably be some kind of search firm involved. Would like it to end up local, but well, these again, there's some CYA going on with there. And Shart DeMille saying, so I heard that Wiles and Tommy Gonzalez might be purchasing a bed and breakfast in Vermont. The time frames of their departures don't quite meet up if you think that thing is going on the back end, as Gonzalez is going to be out here in early June, July, and then Wiles won't be stepping down. He basically isn't running for election again, is what he's announced. So that'll be 2024. So short answer, no. But anyway, more conversation going on there. And of course, still joining us here in studio is Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. And so as much as there has been a lot of focus on everything going on with the next city manager, there has been not exactly flying under the radar, but not nearly as much focus, the kind of air in the room. Not much left to talk about it here, about also a sexual harassment complaint against a city rep, that there was actually some action and a vote, kind of a reprimand, censure, and or training being required for specifically city rep Joe Molinar.
Well, the details haven't been released yet in terms of what will be asked of him in this letter of admonition that City Council. This was at the same meeting where City Council, including Joe Molinar, voted to terminate the city manager. But at that same meeting, they issued a letter of admonition. It's expected that may involve training and that sort of thing. But it involves a sexual harassment claim that was made against City Rep Joe Molinar.
And so in this specific case, as much as there isn't much information, you all were able to actually get a copy of the report of the investigation into this complaint, right?
That's right. I mean, anytime there's a sexual harassment complaint like this, the city brings in an outside counsel to do an investigation. We were able to obtain that report. After we obtained the report, it was important to me that we reach out to the person who made the complaint, and we were able to reach her because she was concerned about, possible retaliation. She didn't want to comment, but was okay that we pursue the story. So yeah, we did get some more details from that report that was done by Clara Burns, an El Paso attorney.
Right. So sticking very closely to the point of what you've been reporting on there as well, kind of centers around one particular incident, right? Or one set of incidents, I guess I should say.
Well, there were a number of pieces to the complaint and a number of incidents, but the main one stems from the city's Thanksgiving luncheon. According to the report, there was live music at this luncheon. The complainant reported that the city representative Molinar kept asking her to dance after she said no. Then after the luncheon, she says that he told her that she, quote, owed him a dance. And then when she said no, he whispered to her that he was going to direct the city manager to make her dance with him.
Okay, so yeah.
So in that report, it says that Molinar denied that, but based on the witness testimony, Burns came to a different conclusion that the complaint was credible.
Yeah, so that's one that, again, kind of flew under the radar as the rest of this has been going on. But again, there might be other, again, retraining. I mean, it's some of those things that were mentioned as possible along with it. We'll see that coming as well.
Well, that's right. And it's got mixed up a little bit into the politics of the situation with the city manager and some of the calls for, at this point, by a few people to recall city representatives and such. So it's kind of become a part of that. I mean, I think it's probably I should just here, quote the report, which basically says that the preponderance of the evidence supports that Representative Molinar's conduct was inappropriate and that the complainant was uncomfortable, intimidated, and offended by the conduct.
And anytime you start getting implications of use of position and, managerial power, as was a direct quote from the report there as well about instructing the city manager to like that starts getting way out of hand. I'll agree with that entirely.
And we did reach out to City Rep Joe Molinar. We thought it was important that we reach him and give an opportunity to respond to some of the specific parts of the report, and he told us no comment.
Okay, so of course those are some of the things coming out of City Council, but they've also been doing some interesting reaching out to other individuals that have been involved and still are in ways in our community, particularly from Lessons for a Year of Conflict in Ukraine. Now, as much as that is literally, half a world away, but can involve some of the material support, those kind of things. And so you kind of wanted to get the perspective on, okay, anytime there was a major conflict going on or any real sizable conflict, it would be foolish at best for any major nation involved in, defense and, military technology to ignore lessons learned. So y'all specifically reached out to some of the former commanders of Fort Bliss on kind of, as the 1st Armored Division and, tanks, material, those kind of things have been coming up questions a lot. What lessons can be learned from the way this conflict has unfolded?
Yeah, so we're a military town. We're home to one of the largest posts in the nation, and Holloman and many others. And so it just seemed an obvious thing to do as, we marked a year since Russia invaded Ukraine.
Certainly.
To go to some of the general officers and commanders there and ask them this question. So what are some of the lessons we're learning from this conflict? And while many of those that are currently generals there didn't want to comment, we were able to reach two retired Fort Bliss commanders, as well as a colonel who heads up the modernization command. And, some of them are old lessons. Actually, many of them are that were kind of maybe perhaps more emphasis or relearning, and some are new. I mean, one thing that's been talked about is how the conflict has introduced some innovations. In particular, the use of cheap drones by the Ukrainians in creative ways. But also the return of old philosophies and platforms, such as the artillery systems used by the Russians. I mean, some of these images look almost like they're from an old World War I or World War II war movie with trenches and tanks and artillery. So it's this kind of weird mixture of new and old.
Yeah, it's very interesting kind of on the back end of that, the drones, or even the term that is becoming more prevalent, loitering munitions, as they've sometimes been put, the kind of, drones that are just onboard explosives. That's been fascinating to see, but some of the analysis of how much just ordnance is being sent downrange, particularly from artillery platforms. There's a lot of focus on particularly missile systems from the U.S., but it's estimated that Russia has fired, like at this point, pretty much more than the entire pre-war stockpile that Ukraine had, among other things. So the industrial nature of this, the production lines, all those things, definitely something that is having a lot more focus on it, particularly again on this kind of year anniversary.
Well, and beyond the production and weaponry, it has just reinforced the old idea of just how important the will to fight is. When this started, I don't think there were too many people saying that the Ukrainians had a significant chance. I mean, people were surprised. But one of the sort of lessons here is just how important or how key it has been that the military leadership and the leadership of that country has managed to rally the nation in their morale, but also the West, which has provided the weapons and technology. But that said, one of the commanders we talked to pointed out the obvious thing, that morale isn't enough. I mean, he said you can have all the morale you want, but you're not going to win if you just have sticks and stones. So that's where Ukraine's ability to rally support from the West has been key, and then learn how to use those systems and deploy them very quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that particularly that was former commander of Fort Bliss, retired Major General Dana Petard, speaking on that and kind of that willingness and both the material to support it. So, I mean, really the kind of multidimensional domain that we are seeing in this conflict of not just the front lines, not even just supply lines, but also the ability to keep manufacturing. Like, all of these things are critical.
Well, it's even extended to space. I mean, when you look at the need for internet communications and using as simple as Starlink and that, so it's having the dominance in each domain. One thing that they also pointed out was Russia has adapted as well, although more slowly. And lately, what we've seen is it's returned to sort of an attrition style of warfare, where they're basically just throwing a whole lot of people into the front, and had some success with that, but at a huge cost of life.
Yeah, one of the phrases that I remember hearing, particularly towards the start of the conflict, wondering, okay, how will this unfold, is that kind of the standard Russian doctrine was recon by artillery, and we've kind of seen a return to that as well. So very interesting lessons about, former commanders of Fort Bliss or of specific units or areas on Fort Bliss on kind of what lessons can be learned and what that might be implemented, particularly here for the troops at Fort Bliss. But one other aspect I want to make sure we get to before we end up getting towards the end of this segment here is about particularly doctors burning out. We've mentioned previously about some more investment coming into the area, something y'all report on, like the hospitals of Providence doing another, I think, $15 million, but maybe $100 more million actually being put into there. But just the kind of state of doctors, particularly you mentioned that shortage it's always kind of been a shortage in our region, but it's at another level now.
Well, it's been well known for a long time, and I won't rehash all that. I think people are very familiar with the fact that we have shortage of healthcare professionals, along with many other causes and impacts. But one thing that isn't talked about as much is doctor burnout. I mean, while doctors will often acknowledge it privately, it's not a secret. It's not something that when a reporter calls up, a doctor's eager to talk about burnout issues.
Sure.
But it has gotten a lot more attention during the pandemic, and I think that's what has brought some of it to life. So we decided to dig into the issue a bit, and it turns out it really is a major problem. And besides some of the other causes of doctor shortages here, I mean, you just look at the demands that are placed on the doctors and how some might reconsider their profession or retirement because of just the load. And they were telling it basically it's gotten worse.
And it's very interesting the way you talked specifically with some local urologists. So one of these specialties that may not often be thought about, just to quote directly from it there, on average, our urologists are seeing upwards of 40 to 50 patients a day. We cannot keep up with the volume, and at some point, something has to give. I mean, that idea of that load is kind of nuts.
Well, that's not out of the norm, but you do have to remember they are working with nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, but it is still a major demand on them. And then the other things that doctors mentioned to us is that as the population ages, there's a growing patient load, but also there's an increasing number of treatments.
No, that's true.
And so that requires going to see a doctor as well. And then administrative tasks, paperwork has increased, demand from insurance companies. I mean, a lot of the doctors we talk to say, we got into this to be in medicine, not to do paperwork and not to deal with prior authorizations from insurance companies. So that's been a stressor as well.
So, I mean, a lot of issues involving the medical field in general, but very interesting to see particularly some of the local impacts for there as well. So, again, joining us in studio right now has been Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. Thanks for stopping by to talk with us, as we do most first Tuesdays of the month here, on some of the big stories and things that you all are working on.
Thanks, Andrew.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Good to be here.
Absolutely appreciate it. And with that, we'll go ahead and take that next break right now. So if you want to get on the line, as we'll have those phone lines open now, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A collision I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot southbound. It's blocking the left interchange ramp. That's ramp F as in Frank. 54 southbound between Stan Roberts and Kenworthy is slow traffic with a 13-minute delay. It's slow on Montana Avenue eastbound McRae out to Zaragoza with 12-minute delays. And an accident with police still on the scene westbound Alameda at Paisano Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by The Verdict with Ted Cruz.
I'm Ben Ferguson.
And I'm Ted Cruz. News just broke that it's likely that the COVID-19 virus came from a Chinese lab. But you could have learned that 3 years ago on our podcast, Verdict.
And that's exactly why you should download Verdict with Ted Cruz right now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you have over $10,000 in credit card debt? The stress from excessive credit card debt can ruin your life. Collection calls, sleepless nights. If you're feeling the financial impact with unprecedented economic challenges, DebtBlue is here for you. DebtBlue uses secret programs that most credit card companies won't tell you about. They'll help you consolidate or settle your debts for a fraction of what you owe. With DebtBlue's Success Guarantee, you pay nothing unless your debt is reduced or completely resolved. There's no risk. The more you owe, the more DebtBlue can save you. See how easy it is to get started with free information. Let DebtBlue show you how 10 minutes could save you thousands. Call now. 800-375-1158. That's 800-375-1158.
I'm just living sky high right now. So I'm very thankful for it. And the team at DebtBlue are phenomenal. They're able to work with you. They're great.
Call for your free debt resolution information now. 800-375-1158. 800-375-1158.
Attend the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. See dealers selling the finest in modern guns, custom knives, ammo, scopes, rifles, shotguns, and much more. Buy, sell, and trade at the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. Do not miss the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th.
Welcome to the CPAP Games live from the Hayes bedroom. It's another eventful night, Bruce.
It sure is, Ron. Steve has been struggling with his CPAP.
His wife, Michelle, is trying to contain her rage.
Michelle throws an elbow.
She's leaving for the couch.
Steve should get Inspire.
Absolutely, Bruce. Inspire is a sleep apnea treatment that gives you comfortable, restful sleep with the click of a remote. There's no mask and no hose. Just sleep.
Learn more at inspiresleep.com.
Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right. Everything you earn doubled. The cash back from trips, restaurants, all doubled. Seriously, though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Rosetta Stone, where language is learned. rosettastone.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. A lot of ways to interact with the show at this point during the program. We do have those phone lines open now, so the number at the top of the screen there, as well as just take it down, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Probably taking those a little bit more towards the top there, but if you want to get on the line now, get your spot in place there. Again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of commentary on what we were discussing there, including Dorley Store saying El Paso's giving Tommy Gonzalez free money with nothing to show. Someone got their feelings hurt. I mean, again, it was in the contract. If this was truly a plan, as it seems that it was from at least those path of city council and the mayor to move towards this, that kind of built in. And to his credit, again, I've never had any particular issues with the city manager, maybe with some of the actions taken, but not necessarily him as a person. I mean, he said that, hey, this is the clause and this is what it is. Now, of course, he does have a golden parachute that's coming along with that. And that's why I have a sneaking suspicion that anytime any future contract is going to have some very maybe different parts of it, at very least when it comes to caps, reining in, etc. Me being the highest paid person in there, particularly when that's like an order of magnitude more than the people who oversee him, city council. It is just a weird way that it is put together there as well. Louis Pinato kind of speculating, saying with the secrecy involving Gonzalez, there's obviously a non-disclosure order in place. Potentially, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if there is, but at the same time, I guess just the provisions of those contracts, the way that they are, I am not surprised that there hasn't been a whole lot more, particularly from those that ended up effectuating the vote in that case. And also on the whole healthcare thing, Flaco Meta saying he is a phlebotomist, 2 nurses, a retired nurse, pharmacist, pharmacy tech, nurse practitioner, and retired funeral director in my family. We probably serve the medical needs of our community. Kind of a case in point there, but how much is needed and is needed around here. So that's why it's a very good thing that we have the medical training in the schools that we do these days, and why there's a need of even more, and why the conditions that come along with it. Because, okay, as much as the medical schools, the nursing, doctor, even the dental school, now that I got the chance to go through more recently, it's not an overnight solution. It takes a while to build up and see that change. So in the short term, these issues, these kind of stress points, burnouts, etc., can come through. Why continuing to focus on that is incredibly important for our community. So that's going to take us through that next break, and got to hit that top of the hour right now. So again, if you want to call in, get on the line to talk about these and other issues affecting us here in the borderland, there's more that I want to mention coming up, including some of these kind of scattered, but could be read as overall part of immigration and border enforcement. So we'll talk about that after this break. You are, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. That number one more time, 915-544-587-6544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A collision I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot southbound. It's blocking the left interchange ramp. That's ramp F as in Frank. 54 southbound between Stan Roberts and Kenworthy is slow traffic with a 13-minute delay. It's slow on Montana Avenue eastbound McRae out to Zaragoza with 12-minute delays. And an accident with police still on the scene westbound Alameda at Paisano Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
When your back pain is your foot's fault. This is Dean's story.
It was affecting me when I walked, which is a kind of a common activity.
Dean's chronic back pain had become a pain in the you-know-what.
At first, I just sort of ignored it, but eventually everything catches up to you.
Physically and mentally.
Back pain affects your mood. It really does.
But that's not the only connection Dean made.
A friend of mine suggested I go to the Good Feet store. I was a little confused. Why would I need a foot store? My feet are fine.
But he thought, what the heck? He had nothing to lose.
They took impressions of my feet, and with the footprint, they were able to get me a personalized arch support that lifted pressure off my back.
So the source of your back pain was right under your toes.
It's something maybe I should have known, but I found out in the nicest possible way.
See how arch supports work for you with a free fitting. Find your Good Feet store at goodfeet.com.
Airway Boulevard at I-10.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM. There won't be much substance on your news feed until you add us. Just like us or click on the link. News at on the KTSMradio.com. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. 2 Americans who were kidnapped in Mexico and survived are back in the U.S. That news was confirmed by State Department spokesman Ned Price. He added officials are working to get back the remains of the 2 Americans who died. His announcement came as one person is under arrest in connection with what happened. Wall Street is closing sharply lower after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said interest rates could be higher than previously expected to tame inflation. The news sparked a broad sell-off with bank shares leading the losses. The 2-year Treasury yield also topped 5% for the first time since 2007. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones lost 575 points to 32,856. White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre says President Biden's approach to China hasn't changed.
We need to keep open lines of communication. We see this as a consequential relationship that we will continue to manage.
She made the comments in response to a top Chinese official statement that the 2 countries are heading toward confrontation and conflict unless America changes course. Beijing's new foreign minister accused the U.S. of leading Western countries in an effort to encircle and suppress the nation. About a quarter of parents lied about their child's COVID status or didn't follow COVID guidelines during the pandemic. Lisa Taylor has more.
That's according to a recent survey from the American Medical Association that includes lying about being vaccinated, avoiding getting them a COVID test, or saying they didn't have to quarantine when they should have. On the other hand, some parents lied not to avoid restrictions, but rather reported their child's age as older in order to get them a vaccine. I'm Lisa Taylor.
The federal government is filing an antitrust lawsuit to block JetBlue's $3.8 billion merger with Spirit Airlines. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. More Americans are heading to food banks because of a cut in food stamp benefits as inflation rises.
Julie Butner, CEO of a Fort Worth, Texas food bank, says the benefit cuts couldn't have come at a worse time.
Food is a leader in inflationary rates today, and so that's really impacting our families.
Over 40 million Americans participate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP. Families that rely on SNAP benefits could see their payments cut by $95 a month. I'm Trey Thomas.
Brian Laundrie's parents are trying to block the release of a personal letter his mother wrote to him. Their lawyer filed a motion yesterday in Florida in response to a request by Gabby Petito's parents to have the letter used as evidence in a civil trial. The letter Roberta Laundrie wrote to her son is marked burn after reading, but Roberta claims that has nothing to do with Gabby's disappearance. A Western Colorado school is allowing an unusually named organization to hold meetings beginning this week. Michael Kastner has more.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
The After School Satan Club began meeting this week at the Paonia K-8 school. The club is an offshoot of the Satanic Temple, which says the after-school group doesn't really have anything to do with the devil.
What's puzzling you is the nature of my game.
Instead, club members organize community service projects and focus on activities such as science and arts and crafts. A parent reportedly asked about forming the club, and it was allowed under the school district's rules for religious groups.
Jenna Ortega says she changed scripts for Wednesday without telling the writers because everything did not make sense. Speaking on the Armchair Expert, Ortega said she doesn't think she's ever had to put her foot down on set like she had to for the series. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by the Texas Department of Transportation. Traffic laws help keep everyone safe, including pedestrians. Cross the street only at intersections and crosswalks. Wait for the walk signal and look left, right, left before crossing. Be safe. Walk smart. A message from TxDOT.
Lenny went to college and racked up huge debt.
A little bit over $100,000.
For a degree he couldn't use? Now what?
I had a friend that went to my computer career and they talked to me about it.
He was done in just months.
I did do it online.
They even helped him get hired immediately after graduation.
One of the things I love about IT is that you can work from anywhere you want.
You could become an IT pro in just months with zero experience at My Computer Career.
It worked for me and I know it can work for you.
It's not rocket science. It's mycomputercareer.edu.
And now for today's Roblox winter weather alert. iHeartland on Roblox has been walloped by a winter snowstorm.
It is a winter wonderland. You can now ice skate at State Farm Park. In State Farm Neighborhood, you can compete in snowball fights, grab a hot cocoa and cookies, and more. There's also special events from your favorite artists and podcasters all month, along with scavenger hunts, exclusive content, and unique items. So enjoy the festive winter weather at iHeartland on Roblox. Head to iHeartRadio.com/iHeartland today.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Records, milestones, firsts, lasts, and everything in between. What happened today in sports history on iHeartRadio?
What's happening, fellow sports fans? It's Andy West. Let's look back on this day in sports history, March 7th. We'll start off today in 1954. The Minneapolis Lakers and the Milwaukee Hawks experiment with the baskets raised from 10 feet to 12 feet during an exhibition game. The Lakers would win 65-63. Jumping way ahead today in 2004, Detroit becomes the first team in the NBA shot clock era to hold 3 consecutive opponents under 70 points with an 86-65 victory over Seattle. The Pistons previously beat Denver 97-66 and Portland 83-68. And today in 2012, the Indianapolis Colts cut their injured quarterback Peyton Manning. Manning, who missed the previous season with a neck injury, was due a $28 million bonus if they didn't cut him. It may have been a bad idea. Manning would sign with the Broncos later in the month. He would lead them to the Super Bowl for the 2013 season, and he'd win Super Bowl 50 for the 2015 season.
Now you know. Today in sports history on iHeartRadio.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour, and always online at KTSMradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. Of course, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk, and we mentioned all those because you can get your comments going on over there. A lot of people doing so there already, but of course, I got that phone line open now as well. At least we think it is. Haven't seen any issues with it otherwise, but had a couple of calls call in and drop. So if you're going to call in, that number again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, and of course, just make sure you stay on the line there. Got good signal or whatever for you, but we're taking those throughout the end of the hour now in case you want to. So let's, of course, talk about that. And, okay, we try not to feed the trolls that much here, but let's just say if you're assuming malfeasance in anything anyone does that disagrees with you, you're probably lost the plot there, including the longer of a rant than I can even fit on the screen here. Eric McNabb saying, had my producer shamelessly come on air a day before the city manager removal was put on the agenda and had her ask bad faith questions she lied about not knowing the answers to. And did this push your right-wing position on the issue, where you admitted the important details of the city manager's contract was comparable to other big cities. And then the next day you lied about not knowing this removal was going to be put on the agenda. I mean, again, if you're going to try and type out a novel, we can't fit it on screen. But also, we didn't know, it hadn't been announced to be on the agenda. So if you're going to call me a liar, prove it. Prove that this was known, that this was going to come out. We were just saying, hey, there's been a lot of conversation about the city manager and the issues around it. So what is the difference? What are the parts of it? We didn't even really talk about the contract of it. And so that's a bigger point here. Hey, if you're going to misquote me, just hold yourself to your own standard, my dude, because the idea of, well, yeah, you misquoted me and therefore constantly strawmanning you that you accuse everyone of doing if they don't quote you exactly, like hold yourself to the same damn standard, including, I don't see the other things you're posting there, including the idea of that I said handguns are grenades. If I remember that correctly, I said handguns are not grenades and don't just go off randomly. Anyway, or the idea that judicious marksmanship, I was saying that was something that should have been seen by, I've seen that in stores before, and not applying that to the individuals that have now been, at least the one that has been rightly charged in the Cielo Vista Mall shooting, because at that point in time, you're speculating that given the age ranges that were being mentioned at that point, that their possession of that firearm at that point in time may have been illegal. So, yeah, just know exactly. If you're going to come at me, just come correct and know what the hell you're talking about there. And so you're both accusing me of having no behind-the-scenes knowledge, and that it's a coincidence, or that it's not a coincidence. Anyway, and yeah, okay, you know what? If you're making claims about what I've said, prove it. Find me the quote or correct yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to end up being removed, because now we're just focusing on what you said and what you said, and not the actual issues, and that is what we're talking about with the trolling here. If you want to talk about the issues, more than welcome to, and anyone wanted to call in again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. So back onto the actual issues here. Willie Jenkins, among others, saying, the leadership change is good because we need more accountability, professionalism, and tact. I mean, that's I think, a very strong possibility of the consideration. There has been other lists of what qualifications should be seen, and say who's going to be the new chief of police. And now, of course, the question of who will be, or in that case, okay, chief of police is hired. Sheriff, of course, is a elected position. So who ends up applying for or going towards that position will be some of the other qualifications we're looking for there. So some other points being brought up here as well, including a Flaco Jimenez, not want to get you in trouble, saying forgot about his daughter, who is also a nutritionist when it comes to the medical field. And then on the whole idea of what's going on with immigration and the other parts of it there, where was it? Richard DeMille saying, I see in the news that there is another migrant wave coming. If Mexico lets them in, then they should house, feed, tend to their needs instead of us. There's a lot going on there. I think that may, if there's no other caravans or stuff like that, I don't follow that reporting as much because, well, until it shows up here, but that May date, that I believe it's May 11th, is kind of the next red letter underlined day for there to potentially be immigration things. That's when of course, Biden administration has announced that they're going to be ending pandemic restrictions kind of writ large, and why there was the canceling of the oral arguments before the Supreme Court. Because Title 42 at that point will essentially be rendered moot. But a couple of things that I did mention that I wanted to bring up when it comes to immigration, border enforcement in our area here, as noted by our news partners at KFOX 14, nearly 150 pounds of drugs seized in 7 days at El Paso area ports of entry, including, the worst kind of masonry, bricks of drugs being stacked up. You both love to see it caught, but hate to see it existing. And we're both seeing on-body smuggling, that kind of desperation needed for it, as well as 0.22 pounds of fentanyl inside a dude's boots and pockets. But then also found in vehicles. So just all types of attempts still being seen absolutely in our area. And even some more of the rabbiting situations, or at least maybe suspected ones, we're seeing in our area. So with a single vehicle rover on Pete Domenici, the Border Patrol did respond as part of it and has issued a statement, but there's not a whole lot of information on if there were detainments on it there. But given the amount of people crammed into the vehicle, 13 to 15 people inside the vehicle and 9 sent to the hospital, it bears some similarity with previous such incidents. And with another set of migrants taken into custody during a traffic stop on I-10 already, early Tuesday morning, about 5:49 a.m. We're still seeing lots of those efforts on this issue in a whole lot of ways here. So we're going to take that next break right now, so you can make sure we got the phone lines up and working right now, and we'll take those calls. So if you want to get on the line, making sure we are going to be talking about it, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash blocking the left interchange ramp, I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot southbound. Heavy congestion in the lower valley on Border Highway eastbound at the Zaragoza exit. That exit ramp is blocked. Slow traffic on the 54 southbound, Stan Roberts down to Kenworthy, 13-minute delays. Injury accident reported Gateway West at Sumac. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories.
How do you save someone from a snake bite? Well, you milk a snake, of course. We'll have the story of a man who does. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Attend the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. See dealers selling the finest in modern guns, custom knives, ammo, scopes, rifles, shotguns, and much more. Buy, sell, and trade at the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. Do not miss the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. The IRS just rolled out a new program to help struggling taxpayers more easily resolve their tax problems. It's called the Taxpayer Relief Initiative, and it opens up powerful new options for people looking to get back on the right track with the IRS. And no one knows this program like the professionals at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution company. They've resolved over $1 billion in tax debt for their clients and have the expertise and experience to help you. One easy call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries of wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Make today the beginning of your fresh start with the IRS. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief now for your free confidential consultation.
Call 800-953-1788. 800-953-1788. 800-953-1788.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, if you want to get on the line, assuming that they're working all right today, I know we have a little bit of weather going on, and we seem to have been susceptible to that lately. In any case, number 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot going on, a lot to discuss in the community, but let's go ahead. Geez, so many good comments coming in over online. But again, we're focused on the issue, so if you're trying to get into a, yeah, no, it's not what I said, this is what you said kind of thing, like that is so pointless, particularly if you can't even actually prove what you're saying. Anyway, we do have a call on the line here right now, at least one getting through. We do have Frankie and Messi on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
This is unbelievable. This is beyond sick. This is beyond the pale of normal human thinking. Now, I sent you an email earlier as a heads up about what I want to talk about. And I don't know if you got it. But if you didn't, well, let me just refresh your mind here. You got this guy in Texas, a representative by the name of Brian Soltran, 2nd Congressional District out there in Texas. And what he is planning to do right now is put together a bill to to the agenda of the 2024 general election for the people of Texas specifically to go for secession. Are you people for secession or not? That's what he is proposing. What kind of sickness is this? I ask you, Andrew, and everybody else out there in the southwest border region, what kind of sick person is trying to undermine the Union of the United States of America? That's my question.
So, as much as this coming up right now, and yes, I did get that, and actually, the Texas Tribune has an article out on this too. Well, case in point, the article title kind of answers the question. This is me quoting directly from it. Quote, "No, Texas can't legally secede from the U.S. despite popular myth," end quote. That is the article title that has been out actually since they've reposted it as of today because it keeps coming up. But that actually did that back in June of 2022 because, as noted by them at that point in time, there was actually the item put forth in June of 2022 during the Texas State Republican Convention, adding that as a platform item, to quote directly from the Texas Tribune here, urging the legislature to put a referendum before the people of Texas in November 2023 to, further quote, to determine whether or not the state of Texas should reassert its status as an independent nation, end quote. This is something that has come up various times over the year, Texas being a large landmass and a large economy. I think what was Governor Greg Abbott pointed out, it was like the 7th or 8th, somewhere in like top 10 of largest economies in the world if it was to be considered on its own. So yeah, this is a theme that comes up, and the fact that, there was the Republic of Texas, even though a lot of people don't necessarily remember how the Republic of Texas ended. I mean, sure, there was, annexation and therefore, causing, the Mexican American War and all those kind of things. But there was, it didn't work out that well as an independent nation on its own. And we were kind of, that Texas government that is at that point in time, very interested in doing so and joining the United States at that point in time. So things are different, sure, different circumstances. But yeah, this does perennially come up, as is exemplified by the fact that there is, this article and these concepts have existed for a while.
Well, I mean, my mind is absolutely blown on this. Now, I know there's other nut jobs out there that have proposed these kind of idiotic statements instead of looking to figure out how we can make the union, even Abraham Lincoln, a more perfect union stuff. And you got these nut jobs out there trying to undo it. Forget the logistics of it, Andrew, and everybody else out there. Forget it. How in the world are you going to secede the state of Texas, and become an independent nation? I mean, my mind just gets lost on all the vagaries and all the other stuff involved. And you wanted to secede from the United States and become your own country? What about the rest of the people in Texas? And forget about the voting stuff. Just the whole purpose of this guy putting that thing out, he should be hanged, drawn, and quartered, for crying out loud. And that's my rant.
I mean, okay, I don't expect it to go fully anywhere. I mean, this is I take it mostly as we're dissatisfied and this is the way we'll describe it. It's kind of a protest in legislation is the way I ended up taking it. Not to say that there aren't those out there that take it very seriously. I mean, you mentioned Texans. There's actually another phrase out there. There's Texians, which sounds similar, I know, over radio, but is spelled differently. And essentially it is those that, as opposed to considering themselves the United States citizen first and then a resident of Texas, they consider themselves a citizen of Texas first and the United States second. My 7th grade teacher, the Texas history unit, at least at that point in time, how it was taught, proudly proclaimed herself a Texian, among other things. So I'm not saying that there aren't people out there, but I think that a lot of people, Austin Redfern among others, saying it's not going to happen, no worries. Yeah, I don't see it being particularly likely. But to add kind of a wrinkle into this is that there's a reason that I stopped back in high school once they actually implemented the Texas Pledge, which, yeah, for any of those of you not in Texas listening into this, it's something that happens in schools, is that you say, honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas one and indivisible. At least that's the way it was at the time. And honestly, literally, that is not followed by the Constitution of Texas. because, among other things, since Texas was this huge land area when it came into the Union, so the Constitution for the state of Texas, I haven't been able to pin it down exactly, but I've long had discussions about that it would involve provisions for subdividing in up to 5 separate states. Now, even that kind of provision, which does exist, again, to my understanding, I need to do a little bit more research on the actual point of it, within the Texas Constitution would be nuts. Like the actual, if that were trying to be done, think about the implications that would even happen with just that happening within the state of Texas. All of a sudden, there being 5 different state governments, there being 5 times the amount of senators suddenly for this area. Think about just the national kerfuffle that would involve in, and then ramp it up to 11 if we're talking about actual secession.
Well, of course, you're 100% right. I mean, there's huge consequences and unintended consequences. But you did point out this is a form of protest. Well, my rejoinder to that is find a different form of protest, for crying out loud. Not to dissolve the United States of America. This nut job. My goodness, I can't get over this. Also, y'all need to survey all the folks, 800,000 people that listen to you, and find out what they think about it. Especially start off with Ben and Barbara and think what they say about that day. And by the way, keep me on, please.
Yeah, sure thing there. Well, let me just say this before we end up getting close to that next break right now. Honestly, okay, if this were to happen, if this kind of boogaloo would end up going down with all, because I can't see this not ending up in some kind of armed conflict with anyone actually taking this seriously. But if it were to go to that point and be a part of it, that's honestly, if there were to be a referendum, say here in El Paso, I think there's more than a few people. You have a lot of commenters going on here, including Robbie Flores saying, you all can go to hell, I shall go to Texas, quoting Davy Crockett, if I'm not mistaken there. But that actually El Paso may end up or could potentially vote to then be like, all right, screw this, we're going to go to New Mexico, because back even more apocryphally, it's hard to pin down as well that there was a vote back when Texas was becoming a part of the actual United States of where did El Paso want to sit. I mean, we are still very far removed to this day from the rest of Texas. Technology has kind of lessened the impact of that distance, but there was a vote to whether we wanted to consider ourselves part of the New Mexico territory or of Texas. Now, Texas coming in as a state as opposed to a territory, that was the way that vote ended up going. But there was the effort to say, no, we should be part of New Mexico. So I would imagine, at least locally, if secession or even subdivision were to end up coming up in any kind of serious matter, and I know I don't take the current effort seriously, but I've been surprised in the past. If it were to seriously come up, I think that might be a local conversation that would end up happening.
Well, I'll tell you what. If push comes to shove, I have no problem whatsoever of El Pasoans becoming New Mexicans. But you leave Barbara and Ben right there. Don't bring them over here. You leave them right there. Other than that, the rest of you El Pasoans, I have no problem whatsoever. Piece of cake. Don't forget to keep me on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Okay, Andrew, take care.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. If you do actually want to add your 2 cents or can get through on the line there, we, of course, are taking those phone calls. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We'll be back after the top of this, the bottom of the hour break, and the news update that comes along with it. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. El Paso County Sheriff Richard Wiles announced his retirement today. Wiles has served as sheriff since 2009 and has worked in law enforcement for almost 43 years. Wiles was first elected sheriff in 2008. He started his career with the El Paso Fire Department at age 18 and spent more than 20 years with the El Paso Police Department. He was appointed chief of police in 2004. Wiles will retire upon the end of his term on December 31st, 2024. A shooting along Alameda in El Paso's Lower Valley last night involved a border Border Patrol agent. It was confirmed last night that someone was taken to the hospital with serious injuries following the shooting. An agent assigned to the Exeter Border Patrol station was involved in the shooting near Midway and Alameda near Riverside High School after responding to an illegal entry made by several individuals. The FBI is investigating. And last night, 9 people with serious injuries went to the hospital after a rollover crash in Sunland Park, where it is believed about at least a dozen people were in a car. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A crash on the I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot South is on ramp F. That left interchange ramp is partially blocked due to that crash. I-10 eastbound's a little slow downtown. Not too bad, though, from Cotton to Trowbridge, 6-minute delays. On the spur eastbound from the Gateway out to the Loop, it's a 5-minute backup. And heavy congestion has the exit ramp blocked in the lower valley on Loop 375 eastbound at the Zaragoza exit. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Calmer weather returning for tonight. We'll see partly cloudy skies to mostly cloudy skies at times. Lows getting down into the 40s, so grab that coat and jacket for tomorrow morning. Breezy to windy and very mild for tomorrow afternoon. Seeing high El Paso around 78 degrees. Partly cloudy skies, maybe slightly cooler for your Thursday, high around 74. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Lowe's always has more ways for you to save. On top of their everyday low prices, pros can save big when buying in bulk. It always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. While supplies last, minimum purchase required. Selection varies by location. Lowe's reserves the right to limit quantities.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Tara, quote, "My doctor wanted me to do saline rinses for my allergies, but I've never been able to successfully use a neti pot. Navage uses suction power, so it's foolproof. There are nights when I'll have particularly bothersome allergies. I'll bust it out, and the results are immediate. It's such a relief. It's become a lifesaver," unquote. She's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
Staples Print and Marketing Services helps small business print big. Now get $15 off signs, banners, and posters when you spend $75 or more. Offer ends 4/15. Visit staples.com/printbig for details. This is your sign to try Staples, where your prints are perfect guaranteed. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
Dad, this is fun. I didn't think I'd like kayaking.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I think it's time to head back in.
Okay. Can we come back?
Sure.
Tomorrow?
Let's check with Mom. Hey, be careful getting out of the boat.
It's a kayak, Dad.
I'm going to return the kayak. Just make sure you have everything.
Yep. Can we walk home?
How about a
taxi?
233 North Maple, please.
It's a short fare from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a neighborhood park or green space near you. Also, find fun activities to do like boating and biking or camping and hiking, plus much more. It's all right in your naturehood.
Best day ever.
A public service announcement brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
The thought of my sons growing up without me inspired me to quit smoking.
I talked to my doctors, and then I threw away all my cigarettes, ashtrays, and lighters.
I started exercising instead of smoking.
Getting support from friends online kept me on track.
Staying away from alcohol when I was first quitting was key.
Instead of smoking after I ate, I'd get up and take a walk.
I missed having a cigarette in my hand, so I'd hold a pen or a straw, anything.
Until I knew I wouldn't give in to temptation, I spent more time with my friends who didn't smoke.
I went to places that were smoke-free.
I didn't stay quit the very first time I tried.
I kept on trying, and I learned something each time.
Do whatever it takes.
No matter how many times it takes.
I quit.
I quit.
I quit.
We did it, so can you.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CDC.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day.
I don't watch television, so I get all my news from you.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk. Might be getting some of those phone line issues figured out. But in any case, if you want to get on the line, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We're getting really interesting into the history part of it here today. Austin Redfern saying, I believe Juarez was once also named El Paso del Norte at the time, translated Paso of the North, which geographically makes it a Mexican reference. I mean, yeah, if you want to go back to Don Juan de Oñate back in the 1600s and that period of the Spanish colonial history. Yeah, it was El Paso del Rio del Norte, the pass of the river of the north, because yeah, they were coming up from central Mexico, which may seem weird to have references to the north here, but is what it is. And the names have changed a lot. One of the first times that the actual postings of military here, particularly around the time of the Mexican-American War, there was not actually what we would now consider Fort Bliss, of course, but there was the post opposite El Paso del Norte, was the army post at the time that was kind of in the realm of the area, what we would now consider San Jacinto Plaza. We've talked about that history some on some of our other programming, but yeah, it wasn't until, essentially what we now know as Ciudad Juarez, named in honor of course, Benito Juarez, renamed in honor of him, became that because El Paso had been known as Franklin, among other things, the De Leon Ranch and holdings, of course, the land grants and those kind of things. You want to get more into it. Most of the missions in the Mission Valley and were not originally on the north side of the river because the river also moved. So we're getting into complicated history here. Suffice it to say that, yes, it was, and name changes has been a part of it going on with a lot of it there, and other names being suggested, such as by Grokumanda as New Texaco. I'm not sure that I would want this region on its own to be its own state, but yeah, I could see that being interesting. Anyway, other commenting about New Mexico, and Richard Genesik saying if that happens, I'm moving back to Dallas. And Flaco Jimenez saying if I was a New Mexican for 22, I was a New Mexican for 22 years, and I'm proud to be a Texan once again. Bernadette Bandicol kind of telling it like it is in my mind. El Paso has always been considered the armpit of Texas. It's not like we'll get much out of it. We're often, I put it gently, I think at least, towards the idea that we're often forgot about by the rest of Texas. But I've also heard allusions to the fact of when it had said that the whole debate about, okay, should El Paso be part of New Mexico, which there is an argument we'd be the largest city in New Mexico, but that other people in Texas saying, okay, fine, New Mexico, you want El Paso, fine, we want Carlsbad Caverns. And it kind of, the conversation ends there. Let's put it that way. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines now to appear to have gotten some of those issues worked out, whatever is going on. Got calls on the line here. We do have James in the Northeast on the line with us here right now. James, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
Well, I thought this time I should call in about smart meters. I know the city is trying to push them a lot.
Yeah, certainly.
And everybody needs to know that they can opt out of putting them in. They don't have to have them. But the thing is, with the electric company, since they do have a monopoly in El Paso, that they do charge for your meter $106.67, and then per month $13.44. It's on the website, and if you choose to keep your own meter, the meter that you've been using, but if you choose to get the smart meter, of course, it's going to be reduced. But they use electricity that you are not, you don't have a choice. They use it anyway. So the smart meters basically will be their way to, and I don't know how it is with the climate charter, a way to control your electricity through the smart meter.
There's a lot of conversations going around this, and as I've mentioned before, we are working on some things to hear directly from, say, El Paso Electric on this. I will say, over on their site, they do mention opting out of getting a smart meter in their FAQs with this, and yeah, some of those numbers that you were just mentioning there. They say that yes, customers have the option to opt out, as they go on to say there. However, they should research the benefits of smart meters before deciding to opt out. I mean, being informed about things, issues, stuff changing like this is certainly a good thing, and one when it's they're kind of in the rollout process of it here. We're also working on some more things along this lines of other issues that have been brought up by our audience, including the way billing works or issues with it, that we'll also be working on some interviews for you all on. So we'll be delving into this further here. But yeah, it's been coming up in conversations, particularly with our commenters online in a way for a while now. So I think from my reading on it anyway, from the utility side of things, as opposed to having someone come out and actually look on the dials on the hand of the actual meter itself and being able to do it that way, they want it to be that way, be more a centralized way, but there's also, of course, the concerns that come along with it that we'll definitely be delving into once we have that interview.
Well, I sent my email to my rep, and so they know exactly what my thought is about it. And I think everybody else should be doing that too, especially with this climate charter that they're trying to push. So it'd be a way for them to control your electricity, not for you to control it, but for government. If the government controls your electricity, then you'll be out of electricity at times if you, along with the ESB, those ESB codes.
I mean, of course, there's ways that this can be done that could be beneficial, but I think you're kind of getting to the idea of, I want to say it was in Colorado over this last year that there was, I think it was for an electric utility, there was a program they had that you could opt into to have lower rates if essentially you were able to have your thermostat set higher. And there were certain individuals who, in one of the heat wave months, ended up coming back and they could not lower their thermostat at all due to, well, essentially a power issue going on at that time. They're saying, hey, due to power situation, your thermostat has been locked. And let me just say, I have issues with the concept of smart thermostats in the first place. Again, the benefits, if they were to be just the benefits, would be good about, learning your habits, raising it when you're not there, lowering it automatically. All those things sound good. But when you start layering on these other things that come along with it or have been documented to be possible, I do start having questions, concerns, maybe never wanting to have one of those kind of things.
Right. Well, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, sure thing. Well, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, and I do believe I have one more call on the line here. We'll try to get to before the end of this show here. Again, if you're calling in the middle of the show, we might end up popping you up live. So just be Johnny on the spot on the line there for us here. We do have a caller on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Raul. Hey, Andrew.
Hey there, Raul.
In reference to what Frankie brought up about this nut, Republican nut. I'm sure he's a Republican. Wanting to secede, Texas to secede from the Union. Well, MTG has been calling for a national divorce. This is the red states. The states that pay less into the federal government than they get back. The blue states send money to the red states. That's what happens. So, I'd be fine if they all left. We'd be losing the Confederate South. Big deal. We'd be losing the flyover America. I want to be in the part of America where the cities are, the universities are, where the jobs are, where progress is being made instead of wanting to go back. Let's make America great again, to some mythical America that never existed. It was never great for everyone in this country. It was not great for the slaves, the blacks. It still isn't. It was not great for the Native Americans. It still isn't. So that's a mythical thing. And I know the Republicans, they want to get rid of the public schools so that they don't have to teach down the line what happened on January 6th. They want to change that history too. They want to pretend it didn't happen. It was just a bunch of tourists coming together. So what affects El Paso in America is the two-party system. And we have the party of the Democrats that looks like America, equal representation of blacks in the Congress, a lot more women and Hispanics, unlike the Republican Party, predominantly white old men. And they're the crazy party. They're the party of the insurrectionists. They're the party of Trump. They want Trump back in the White House. This guy who had a FUBAR for a presidency, but they want him back because they're lemmings in his cult. And a bunch of them are the people who call into your station and make comments to this station. That's who they are. And we're seeing it all play itself out, and it will play itself out in court when he's indicted the federal grand juries, and when he has to show up in court, and then we'll get to see everything, all the videos that are relevant, all the witnesses that saw him do nothing for 3 hours, and all the documents that we have. So that's where this country is in a crisis. It's not good. It's very divided, and I hope he doesn't stoke up his violent mob to get these prosecutors and all the critics that he has in this country.
I believe we have a standing bet for a lunch bet on if he will actually be, particularly on January 6th charges. I mean, of course, there's other things involving businesses going on that are percolating through on their own way, but I think on January 6th on charges being brought against him, I do believe we have a standing bet on that of a lunch on if that actually ends up coming through to charges, because once we've gotten past the hearings, and there was, of course, the criminal recommendations, whether or not he actually ends up going to court or being brought into court on charges, again, actual criminal penalties, not the civil ones that have been going on in other ways and involving, like, say, the secret documents, anything like that. But let me just say this. When it comes to the whole idea of a national divorce and you being in favor of it, do you like to eat? Are you a fan of being able to eat? Is that something that you enjoy or appreciate the ability to do?
Yeah, and we would eat anyway.
Well, sure, that's an easy thing to say, but you mentioned, the jobs, the places, and the cities where they are. If you think that it would just be a even clean split, even north-south the way it is, if you think that it's just going to be like the deep south that ends up seceding off from this, that's not the way things are aligned these days. That's keeping in the 1860s vein of thinking. What we're really looking at primarily is the difference between densely and sparsely populated areas. So rural versus urban, and suburban probably falling somewhere in between, depending on which state that they're in. So if you think it'll be even an idea of a clean national divorce, I have several bridges to sell you, because I mean, as was I think mentioned in the comments earlier, the idea of separation out of like Oregon kind of wants to kick out these some of the major big cities in there, Washington state, similarly Idaho. There's a bunch of other kind of efforts, considerations along those lines. So we're not talking about simple divide between, as it was in the Civil War, of slave states versus free states, so to speak. We are talking about densely versus not, and the kind of not even necessarily the values that are there, but the way of living the way it is. And so the upshot of that is the reason I brought up eating and the me appreciating the possibility of doing that in the future is that much of the food is not made by a whole lot of people. It's in the rural areas. And so to think that, I mean, sure, there are technologies out there, grow houses, the amount of infrastructure and power, etc., it takes to actually successfully do those is several orders of magnitude higher than it is to just plant stuff in the ground and harvest it. So if you're talking about it being, I mean, we're almost talking about going back to city states, if that's the really way you're wanting to do that. And then we're talking about total balkanization of the country, which is something I am wholeheartedly against. So if you're wanting to say, I mean, sure, we have had a lot of division in this country, but I kind of reject the idea that we're more divided than ever. Again, we literally had a civil war where people were shooting at each other over national identity and the values and how governance should be done. I completely disagree with the idea that we are anywhere near that now. Yes, there's a lot more division. Yes, there's, of course, stuff going on online constantly, which is one of the reasons I say that we focus on the issues here, because you just want to scream at people. There are functionally infinite amount of places online that you can do that, but actually talking about things. I've mentioned this before. Rage is a very easy emotion. It's persuasive, it's seductive, it makes you feel fired up, but you don't get a whole lot done with rage. There's a reason that, the Marvel character, the Hulk, isn't known for his great humanitarian efforts while in a rage state. It's really good at destroying things, but not at building up or even maintaining them. So if you think that's a mode of way to operate forever, and just try to even sustain rage in your own life, it burns you out, either in the short term or over time. And eventually you calm down and realize, oh, all that stuff I knocked over, I gotta deal with. And if I almost still want to have like running water or even basic services. So that's why I still can maintain my stance of being completely opposed to anyone that espouses this idea of accelerationist, ethno-state, any of these ideas that we'd be better if we just did our own thing, because there's just so many screwed up concepts that end up coming along with the implementation of all of that. Kind of like we were talking about escalation, arms race, that to think that it wouldn't go towards that way, fully and completely opposed to it. And I do believe the American system can endure this. But as we've talked about with around the world, we know every bad thing that is going on constantly, perpetually. It's just the weight of the modern world. So there are by many objective markers, even with the conflict in Ukraine, showing that this has been one of the prosperous, maybe it was like before the conflict in Ukraine, peaceful eras in history, because we have not had major global warfare, again, exempting Ukraine. That's a friction point, and we'll see how that one turns out. And that things overall, in aggregate, have been improving for the overall human race, and even, yes, in this country. Now, there may be governance issues, and this is not to say, as often gets put up, so things are good, don't worry about it. That is absolutely not what I am saying. I'm saying that there are many important things that we do delve into because, the whole more perfect union thing is something always to strive for, but also improvements, making changes, doing things better as much as possible is certainly a focus on it. But to say that, screw all that, let's just blow it all up and assuming I'll come out on top, that's the real core of it. The idea that we are going to be the ones on top is the kind of core idea that comes along with this, and why I often say that if you're putting in a law that you think like, oh, hell yeah, I'll get everything I want done, but the idea of that being put into place and then controlled by people you disagree with politically makes you wake up in a cold sweat at night, maybe that rule shouldn't exist. And so even with this idea, just to make it clear, I'm against secession, in case that wasn't totally clear here, because the idea of, let's do everything we want forever. And I mean, that leads to so many different things like, single party states and just, Anyway, so again, if you like to eat, if you like to have, besides your big cities, operas, all those kind of things, the actual ability to survive in them, and say the water supplies that end up coming out of it. Sure, El Paso is its own thing. We've got the whole, Waco, Bolson area, but most other major cities don't end up getting their water from within their city limits. So if you truly want to talk about national divorce that way, I don't think you've thought it through and how nuts this is going to be. Anyway, appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth, even if we have some significant differences and disagreements, but we are here to discuss them. So anyone wanting to focus on and talk about the issues is more than welcome here as we continue on what we're doing with this show. Anyway, let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this, we'll tell you a little bit more about what we got coming up for you on the program, as well as just a whole lot more going on in this space. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heavy traffic on eastbound Border Highway at the Zaragoza exit. It's blocking the exit ramp. I-10 eastbound from Campbell to the downtown exits to the Hunter Viscount exit. It's a 10-minute delay. Northbound Global Reach, just before you get to Liberty Expressway, an injury accident with El Paso Fire on the scene. And Global Reach southbound is stop and go from the Spur down to Montana Avenue. 30-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
It doesn't matter what you drive, it's how you get there. Brake Masters doesn't care. We've seen it all and fixed it all. Get your vehicle in Brake Masters shape today. Download coupons and schedule an appointment from your smartphone.
Brake Masters! We give you an honest break.
On the podcast Really Know Really, join best friends Jason Alexander and Peter Tilden, along with experts, newsmakers, and celebrities, in a search for answers to life's most baffling, intriguing, and annoying questions. You know, those things that make you go, really? No, really?
I think there was a 17-year-old in Rhode Island who ran a candidate that was a deepfake.
Really? Wait, that's news to me. That's Really Know Really right there.
Really Know Really.
Listen to Really Know Really on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Attend the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. See dealers selling the finest in modern guns, custom knives, ammo, scopes, rifles, shotguns, and much more. Buy, sell, and trade at the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th at the Forum Ballroom, 3800 Maddox, El Paso, Texas. Do not miss the El Paso Gun Show this weekend, March 11th and 12th.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The patented key ingredient is something called Testofen, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again, at work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text HUNK to 42424 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text HUNK to 42424. That's HUNK to 42424.
Did you know that only 2 in 10 El Paso County students graduate with a bachelor's degree? By supporting Border Youth Athletic Association's mission of educational attainment, you will create a long-lasting impact in our students' lives. Your monthly donation enables 4th through 12th grade students access to after-school programs, providing a safe and healthy environment. BYAA engages and empowers El Paso's future through mentorship and leadership development. We believe every player who gets an education wins. Do you? Go to borderyouth.org and show your support for our youth today.
Rosetta Stone, where language is learned. rosettastone.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. We've had a lot of conversations going on here today, going a little bit further afield than I expected, but that's kind of par for the course for how we always do things here. By the way, finally found that reference I was looking for from where Texas could subdivide into separate states. It's not actually in the Constitution. It was in the joint resolution for annexing Texas to the United States that was approved on March 1st, 1845. So happy anniversary to that. And one of the things said there, new states of convenient size not exceeding 4 in number, in addition to the said state of Texas and having sufficient population, may hereafter, by the consent of said state, be formed out of the territory thereof, which shall be entitled to admission under the provisions of the federal Constitution. There's a whole lot more legalese there, but interesting. So it actually is a part of how it could work. But let me just say that we'll talk more about this and the other things here. One comment I want to get to before we hit this end of the hour right now. It was Diana Beers, I want to say, asking a little bit earlier about difficulty in listening to the show and of dealing with the opinions that end up going on here. I get that entirely. She says, specifically, I have a very hard time listening to your talk show because of ignorant callers. It makes me feel hopeless. Why am I still living here? I have a different tolerance level for these kind of issues. I will fully admit that. But what I will say is that I never find ignoring or just saying, oh, that's just what those people think, and not engaging in the issues to be a useful way to get through this. As much as I don't want to have to talk about most of the stuff we end up getting into, I mean, the idea of there being major governance issues, border security, immigration issues of all stripes and sizes, issues with city manager. None of these things are necessarily what I want to talk about. I'd love to talk about only the good things that are going on, but that's not what we need to focus on. That is not what ends up being the most useful, or things that like efforts, attention need to be paid to. So that's the way I look at it, that by discussing it, that by hearing from other opinions that you may not agree with, which I don't say everyone should force themselves to do. I definitely dive into, because knowing what conversation is trying to find, okay, how can we actually navigate through this? Because as I mentioned earlier, rage is a super easy emotion, but it doesn't get things done. Getting things done often involves understanding, taking the time, and frankly, these discussions. So that's what we focus on. So if you take it in that mentality, at the very least the way I do it, that may be easier for you. But also I will say that we do have some very interesting opinions that come through on this, but I think the vast majority of people out there, which is the majority of our audience, who don't call in or comment, which is not to their detriment at all, but just kind of nature of what it is, that there's a lot more people reasonable out there than maybe totally displayed. And I also take comfort in that. Now, I'm not talking like silent majority kind of type here, but people who aren't actively ticked off tend not to be the most vocal. Let me just put it that way. Anyway, that'll do it for us for our show for today. Again, working on some interviews for you involving other big issues involving us here in the borderland, including, electric utilities, bill payments, smart meters, those kind of things, as well as other things involving our elected officials and their response to these items, among others. So we got to leave it there for today because we are super out of time. So I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We'll do it again tomorrow as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. So until then, until next time, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when y'all out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heavy congestion remains eastbound on the border highway at the Zaragoza exit. The exit ramp is blocked due to heavy traffic there. I-10 eastbound from Campbell to Hunter Viscount, it's a 6-minute delay. Stop and go on Global Reach southbound from the Spur down to Montana Avenue, 24-minute backup. And it's slow on Montana Avenue eastbound from McRae out to Zaragoza, 11-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Because you never hear this.
Hey, hon, I'm late.
Chris, I am so pleased you missed the beginning of our meeting.
Thanks for making me wait, Dad. I talked to a lot of strangers.
Check on your commute. Stay informed. Traffic and weather all day. Or you might never hear the end of it.
Well, you were late to our anniversary dinner that one time.
Yes, how could I
News
forget?
on the hour. El Paso's News Radio. Traffic and weather all day. KTSM. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.